welcome to the BAT podcast. I'm Randy Nonneberg, co-founder of Bring a Trailer. And I'm super excited that today we have a very special guest. Mr. Freeman Thomas is here with us. He is the CEO and Chief Creative Officer for Meyers Manx, which is a new and evolving company, obviously, from the old buggies they were building back in the day and now what they're doing today. And also, Mr. Thomas has had an illustrious career with several OEM manufacturers and in with the design departments of everything from Volkswagen to Daimler Chrysler to others that he'll detail for us. He's also an active user of BAT. We're very excited to always surface really interesting folks that are members of the BAT community. So Mr. Thomas, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Randy. It's a real pleasure to be here. And Bring a Trailer. It's one of those. I get the Daily Mail every day, and I get a lot of links coming in the morning from a lot of different places. But Bring a Trailer stays on, because that's probably one of the first places I go in the morning. Start looking at what kind of cool stuff is that, and you guys have really kind of captured, I think, the grassrootsness of the enthusiast, and that's and the bandwidth is amazing. It goes from the James Dean engine all the way on up to collectible vehicles, and I see a lot of people turning to Bring a Trailer, in that format. I love that you can also comment on it, and people that are looking at something give some your suggestions or background or sharing thoughts and things like that. So it's a great platform.
Well, thank you so much. It's always just amazing for us to hear who's lurking in the background, right? Some people do it with their proper name, and some people do it with a less clear indicator of who they are based on their anonymous username. So when I heard that you were involved through some mutual friends and that you are passionate about BAT, it made perfect sense, frankly. Obviously, your experience and now this interesting involvement in Manx, which we'll talk about, just aligns really well with BAT's variety, right? We feature, like you say, everything from a dune buggy to a Formula One car. It's just sort of all over the map. But it sounds like you're the type of enthusiast that appreciates that sort of variety. So tell us, if you could, I gave a very, very brief intro of some of the things you've done over the years, but I know automotive design has been your forte, I would say, and give us the just sort of quick overview of some of the highlights of that, and then we'll dive into the details.
Okay, well, my background really is a combination of living in Southern California and living in Europe, and living in Europe and California has really influenced the way I think. And when living in California, I was the neighbor of Jeff Swart in the 60s into the early 70s, and so really influenced by brands like Porsche and Volkswagen and American cars. In our neighborhood, Cypress, California, we had everything from when Mustang came out. Mustang showed up everywhere. We had Corvairs, we had European cars, we had Jaguars, we had Mini Coopers, we had everything was in that neighborhood. It's just a middle class, kind of a condo townhome development in Southern California with a bunch of alleyways that we'd ride our Stingrays through, and that sort of builds up your passion, interest, so I did a stint in the Air Force. I spent 4 years in the Air Force out of high school. And when I got out, I found out about Art Center, and I went, applied. And what I did was I took a night class first because I had no background in design, but I was very passionate. I've been drawing cars since I can remember. I think the earliest memory of drawing a car was probably in about the first grade. And one of my first contests in first grade, designing a fire truck. So anyways, fast forward, Art Center, got into Art Center. It had just passionate there. I mean, it's as though I found my people. It's where you were allowed to draw cars and design cars and design the future. And also we had great teachers like Strother McMinn, who was on the board of Pebble Beach, and we learned a lot about history. And so with one foot in the future and one foot in the past of history, sort of creates a really interesting mindset. So after about the fifth semester, I was one of two of the kids that got asked by Larry Shinoda to intern for him. And so I went back east to intern for him for the summer. And after the summer, he asked me, he goes, "Hey kid, where do you want to work when you graduate?" And I said, "I really would like to work at Porsche." And so he said, "Well, I worked at General Motors in the Skunk Works. And one of my best friends is Tony Lapine. And, let me see what I can do." So he calls him over lunch, and he comes back and he says, "Tony's really interested. Could you send him your portfolio?" And so I'm only in the fifth semester, which is the second year of Art Center. And so I sent him my portfolio, and Porsche made me an offer right away. Wanted me not even to finish Art Center. And so I went back to Art Center in the fall, and Strother McMinn said, "No, you have to finish." And Porsche said, we'll hold the job for you. So, I come up to graduation, and I have basically three offers when I graduate. I have an offer from Citroën, Ford of Europe, and Porsche. Porsche by far was the least salary of any of by far. But that was where I wanted to go. And so I went to Vizag. It's an experience that I will absolutely not want to change. It's like the next level of education, especially at that time. These were the times of Helmut Bott, Hans Metzger, all the greats were there. And just to be able to be absorbed in that environment, working on projects, presenting to those people, having those discussions. My boss, Tony Lapine, was amazing. I mean, he was a chameleon storyteller. And I think a lot of my inspiration for storytelling came from Tony. And another person I worked for was Richard Zoderberg. And Richard designed 9 Porsche race cars. His first race car that he designed at Porsche was the 908-3. And that he did the body design, and then he did 935 with Norbert Singer, all the tricks, all the aerodynamic tricks. Having those as chief on the design side for 959, and it goes on and on and on. And he got into Group C development. Even was on the 917 program early on, developing a better 917 body that had enclosed wheels, and but wasn't chosen because they had calculated the wheel spats would take about 2 minutes longer to open up during a pit stop, even though it was more aerodynamic. So they said, "Hey, as a consolation prize, you can design the graphics for our car." And he goes to Tony, and he says, "Tony, what does that car look like to you?" And actually it was Tony going to Dick and saying, "What does that car look like to you?" And Dick said, "I don't know about you, Tony, but it looks like a pig to me." And that's how the pink pig was created. But so after Porsche, I was approached by Jay Mays to join Audi. And I made that decision to join him as his assistant chief designer.
What year would that have been? What era?
That was at the end of 1990. And so I in January of 91, we opened up the new Volkswagen Audi Design Center in Simi Valley, and with Jay Mays, and we had just a great team of designers and modelers that we had already had a relationship with at Porsche and Audi and so forth. We brought the right people together, kind of a dream team. And then we started developing lots of future ideas, and then of course the Beetle concept came out of that. We at Audi, Jay, and I were really kind of the co-conspirators behind the new Beetle. And then because we knew that for Audi to survive in America, Volkswagen had to be strong, and Volkswagen is ready to pull out of the market in those early days. And so we got the approval by PF to do the Beetle and show it at Detroit. And then, history sort of goes on from that point. And then Audi TT after that, Jay got the job of a design director, global design director for Audi, and he wanted me to come over with him. And so we created the Audi TT together. And then I was with Volkswagen Audi through the 90s, and then Daimler Chrysler came knocking and offered me vice president of advanced design and vehicle architecture. And so that meant me, my family and I moving to Detroit. And so we did that. And the Chrysler 300 was the first thing that came out of that, out of our studios. And that's a lot about the storytelling, of a vehicle, working with great people. Also, Tom Gale, learned a lot from Tom Gale. Ralph Gilles was part of that. A lot of names that I'm very fortunate to have great relationships with. And then I stayed with them until about 2005, and then Jay came knocking again, because at that point he was a group vice president of Ford Design, which included all the PAG brands. And so Henrik Fisker had just quit, and the minute he quit, he called me. So I joined Ford and ran advanced design for Ford and out of the Irvine studio, and then eventually having the studio, advanced studio in Dearborn and in Shanghai and also in London. And so always one foot in the past, one foot in the future, and then I retired from Ford at the end of 2017. And I look at it as more of a sabbatical, because I just wanted to get away from kind of the corporate side a little bit, find myself again. And at the same time, I beforehand, I had met, Alois Roof. I've done 3 cars for Alois. I've done the new CTR, the SCR, and then I did the CTR 3 early on. And then through that, I met Philip Serafin. And so Philip and I became good friends. And I had been friends with Bruce Meyers since the 90s. And I brought him into the Volkswagen studio back then. And the thought occurred, I wonder what they're doing with it, and so that's how that all started. And I brought that, I called them up and then brought Philip in on it. And so that's where we are now.
Amazing. Well, that I made you give a little monologue there, and you deserve to take a breath. And honestly, it doesn't do it justice. I mean, going through, man, we could spend tens of minutes and hours just talking about different moments you've had in that career. But I appreciate you giving us an overview, because part of that sort of variety component we were just talking about is going around to different companies and seeing so many different perspectives and the names you mentioned. I mean, talking about Shinoda, starting with Shinoda and him making phone calls on your behalf is like the stuff out of daydreams for me and many of my friends. So I so appreciate you sharing that. But one thing I wanted to jump on was, I mean, you talk about your, beginnings in Southern California and car culture and that sort of thing. I've always thought it was super interesting that these companies had design outlets in SoCal, right? And you maybe get asked about this a lot or not, but like, working for a European company with the mothership in Germany or, wherever it may be, whatever was going on there, they decided to, create these outposts in Southern California and capture talent such as yourself that was either out of Art Center or for whatever reason, out of this epicenter of Southern California. Can you talk about that and why that was either important for you to be in that location or to, bring people? I presume Europeans came to that location and people from all over the world came to these design centers, and some of them still exist, I know, in Southern California. And why did that phenomenon really take root and become so important?
Yeah, it goes back to the 1960s when Strother McMahon had a really good relationship with Toyota, and so he was very instrumental in creating this relationship. The Japanese were very astute about capturing the American taste and the American lifestyle and things like that, and that's one of the reasons why the Japanese automotive industry accelerated so fast from Honda and Toyota, especially accelerating into the 1960s, into the 70s, and Volkswagen losing ground, and the American companies losing ground quickly, losing market share, and it had a lot to do with understanding what people wanted, and also those cultural lifestyles. So. And it's interesting because the first person to open up a California studio was Dave Stollery at Calty. And matter of fact, I just saw him the other day, and he's at one of the vendors. He actually creates all the lifeguard stations in California and around the world that you see. And he came up with this idea. And he's a very diverse person. He's a great person to talk to because he was also a child actor with I Love Lucy, Disney. He's had many lives. And he worked at Opel in Germany, and he worked with Dick Zoderberg, and so the relationships are very close among designers. So with Volkswagen, California has always been this hotbed of innovation, of lifestyle, and new ways in which to reimagine life and objects and everything else. It's the reason why the film industry came here. It's the reason the aviation industry came here. We have the beaches, we have the mountains, we have the desert, we have every single kind of climate, from snow to surfing to and every kind of activity, especially in Southern California. Southern California is really, I think, so innovative with lifestyle, whether it was Hobie Alter with the catamaran, kind of scaling that for everybody, or and it's Bruce Meyers. Bruce creating the original fiberglass dune buggy, creating a pop culture icon that captured the hearts of everyone, including Steve McQueen, Elvis Presley, got onto the movie screen. People wanted that lifestyle. So it's very natural, with Art Center. Art Center started here in the 1930s. It knew that this was where the pebble hit the pond. It knew that. And Art Center was structured to kind of create graduates that would go into the film industry, advertising, design, fine art, all the different aspects of and communication. And so many great people came out of Art Center through the years, from Sid Mead, doing all of the future, from Tron to Blade Runner to everything else, always on the leading edge. Many designers go around the world, but gravity pulls them back to California. Even my ex-colleagues that are working in Europe and around the world, they can't wait to get to California. California is just still it. And, and it's not that it's the best place in the world. It just allows you to do everything in one place. And that's what's nice about it. It allows you to be yourself. And I think a lot of people look at California as casual, open-minded, innovative, ever-changing. And it's really the perfect place. And it's a perfect place for Meyers Manx. But with Volkswagen and Audi, when you look at the Volkswagen products, especially from the 1950s and 60s, and how we, as Californians, reimagined those vehicles, the Beetle became kind of the summer of love vehicle, the microbus, the Carmine Ghia, the car culture that came out of that, the Porsche culture, all the Porsche dealers, Vasek Polak, Chick Iverson, it just sort of reimagined what it was like. The Speedster is a California product. It's just Johnny von Neumann, James Dean, you just go back. It is the quintessential idealized lifestyle that applies to the automobile. And it's just, believe it or not, it's just at the beginning right now. This is not this, and as we get into autonomy and we get into other things, the equal amount of people want to say, okay, that's good. That's maybe that's my main car that I drive around and I put my family in when I'm going to go travel and do things like that, and I'm going to commute. But there's that other car in the garage. That's me. I want to take it up to the Santa Monica Mountains. I want to take it down PCH. I want to take it to a Cars and Coffee. I just want to drive my friend around. That's what we're about.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, man, you touch on so many interesting themes there in terms of California and what it has meant and where it is headed. I'm obviously lifelong California guy as well, except for living in Germany a little bit. You and I have crisscrossed a little bit. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of your times there. But Manx, this Manx topic is hanging right in front of us. We kind of got to go after it, and I'm excited to go after it. So this is a new enterprise for you, and an evolving enterprise that has been around obviously for a long time. There was the early buggies that you're talking about, Bruce Meyers being the innovator of. And he unfortunately passed away not that long ago. And that was obviously in the automotive news circles. And I heard about that. I never met the man, but can you describe a little bit for our audience the history you have with that company and maybe with him, and what sort of the steps were that have now led to you being involved there?
Sure. So I met Bruce in the 90s. And, and at that point I was running the Volkswagen design studio in Simi Valley. And I thought, because he was such a hero of mine, and I was a huge fan, and I'd met him, casually a couple of times. And I thought, I called him up and I said, Bruce, I'd love for you to come up to the Volkswagen design studio and spend a couple of days with us. And so he stayed at my house, and I had, privately, I had started some Meyers Manx concepts, because I think that the universe of Volkswagen, Porsche, and Meyers Manx are one. Meyers Manx is kind of like the child, the child of Volkswagen and Porsche just happened to be born in California, and it's a little bit more disruptive and free and does what it wants, and it's just this cool thing. And so Bruce came, and we had so much fun together. I shared a lot of ideas. We did a lot of talking, and then encouraged him to bring back the original Manx. I thought that the original Manx was really so powerful and so strong, and that he had the energy to do that. And he did. He brought the original Manx back, and then he did the Manxter, and so really innovative products. And so fast forward, I would meet him on and off, at shows and things like that. And we always had a great relationship, and had a kind of a mutual synergy on the way we thought. And when I went to Volkswagen and Porsche, part of the mindset is the way we design vehicles was with a kind of a whimsical mindset, but mixed with great engineering and capability. And that's really what Meyers Manx is it's a very functional product that is so clever and so smart. It's actually genius. And Bruce is a genius. And so fast forward about, I'm going to say almost 3 years ago, this is when I was talking with Philip, and I saw a Meyers Manx coming out of Potrero Canyon in Santa Monica Mountains. And I looked at it, I had my wife and daughter with me, and I said, wow, that is an icon. And so I thought, I called up Philip, I said, what do you think about us asking Bruce and Winnie Meyers if they'd be willing to sell Meyers Manx? And he said, that's a great idea, let's do it, And so I called up Winnie and Bruce, and Bruce said, you're the only person I would sell it to.
Well, that's quite an honor for sure, given your history with him, and And I think many would agree, having a moment, seeing one of those actually going down the road. I've gotten to sit in
Yeah.
one before and run around the paddock. I've never driven in one on a public road, but they are quite the driving experience, aren't they?
Well, they're a blast. They are a blast. It is hard to define what a Meyers Manx is. It's sports. It's a sports car. It is the ultimate off-road vehicle. It handles amazing. It is so capable. You can do anything with it. It is all weather. And in 1967, it was the outright winner of the first Baja 1000. And it beat everybody, including all the motorcycles, set the record, everything. And since then, there's always been a Meyers Manx class, and Bruce was one of the founders of the Baja Nora, race. And so the legacy, it started in 1964 in Lido Island, California, on Newport Beach, and that's where he built the very first car. And then his wife Shirley worked at Road and Track magazine, and John Bond and his wife Elaine Bond were so smitten by what he was doing that they basically threw their resources at him, and they were the first investors into Meyers Manx. And they had their advertising department, their photographic department, their writers working with Bruce. Bruce came up with the idea of he wanted to call it Manx, and it was Elaine Bond that came up with, you got to call it Meyers Manx. And the logo and everything. And I think the original logo was designed by Bill Neal, who is still around, a very iconic artist. And so, part of its beginnings was this very well choreographed, design meets art, and when you look at the original advertising and the graphic design and the covers of the magazines and how everything was choreographed, it was serendipity. I mean, it was really pop culture happening as it was going on. And so, fast forward, today, we, had a lot of conversations with Bruce and Winnie and a lot of negotiations. And really, truly, it took about 2 years to where we were both happy and finalizing the deal. And it was great because Bruce and Winnie fully, they were happy. Bruce was so happy. And, Philip and I saw Bruce about 4 days before he passed away. And we spent about 4 hours with him. And his ideas and his dreams were still just as if it was the first day. And so, that he is a true genius. And as we're going through the design of the Meyers Manx, it's an icon. It really is. And we have our strategies set up now. As we're moving forward, we've got a lot of great resources. We have our new building. It's literally walking distance from the Road and Track building where it started, and so it's right back where the pebble hit the pond. It's so and we'll be opening that probably within some months once we get it all set up and we have it with our showroom and we're doing merchandising and everything else. But we've got a design team, and I'm leading that as well, so that every line, everything that we do is done succinctly to the way Bruce would have done it.
I love it. What a cool opportunity and a cool future that it has in front of it. I didn't realize it was right back there in the epicenter again, and you were going to be doing it from there, but that makes all sorts of sense. That old Road and Track building obviously is near and dear to many people for what it was, and then its more recent iterations and that area of innovation. Can you tell us a little bit? I don't know if it's secret or what's happening with, obviously you guys are going to be selling vehicles or selling kits. Are they going to be old, air-cooled VW powered, or are you veering into other types of vehicles or other motivation for them? Or is it really looking to be exactly like what was produced by Bruce and his team in the early days, or will they evolve? What's going to happen?
Well, I think you just answered it. So
that was a leading question. That was a leading question.
We have years of work ahead of us. We have years of work. Because the Meyers Manx, the brand, it's got so much potential. It's so deep. But in the beginning right now, we're going to walk before we run. And one of the things that we're doing is we're going to have 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future. And the foot in the past is we're remastering the original Manx 1, which is what Bruce created in the 1960s. And there's different iterations of that vehicle, from the swing axle version through to the IRS version, what they call a square tail and a round tail. They will be true continuations of those vehicles, with every accessory that was available at that time done absolutely accurately and authentically, so that we're looking at the strategies of how we will sell those, but we will definitely have we will still be selling kits, so for those that will want to build something themselves, and we're going through that strategy right now. And then the other foot is going to be in the future. The future is that we're looking at the original Manx, and we're looking at it from the standpoint of how Bruce created this masterful body. I mean, it is just, it's an icon, and we really don't want to change it, dimensionally and size-wise. It is really, as cars get bigger and heavier and less agile, there's something magic about the original. And so, but there's so many places that we can improve this. Battery electric is going to be a big part of this, but it's not like the way that battery electric has been approached by others. With the years of experience I have in the industry, working hand in hand with the engineers and scientists that have been developing the packaging of electrification, there is so much opportunity to package this so you won't even see it. And so by doing that, also by creating a safer platform that has side impact that's hidden, rollover protection that's hidden, crush zones that's hidden, reliability, braking, things like that the original chassis can't give you. And we fall under, we're a low volume vehicle manufacturer. So it allows us to build vehicles under 5,000 vehicles a year. That's a lot of vehicles. I mean, that's still the size of, if a company like Lotus wanted to do that, that's a healthy size. So that's kind of where we think is going to be the magic. And we can do certain things under that, like, for instance, the new DOT law that allows low vehicle volume. That allows us to do about 326 turnkey cars for the US that have to meet an EPA requirement, but which battery electric will easily. And we also have the opportunity with certain types of engines to do that. But in Europe, it's 1,000 vehicles to do that, so, and there's other markets around the world. So, but we also think the magic of building the DIY is still, something that is a, something that would be a joy to put together with your family, and so that's something that we're really deeply looking into and researching how we do that and making it simple and hassle-free. The whole assembly process, where today it's a different approach. You get the body, no two builds are alike because all the holes are drilled in different places. We're going to simplify all that and also make it so that it's accurate, so that things come together well. It's like a beautiful watch.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that unfolds. And yeah, I think it's super wise, a connection to the past, but also, you got to be forward focused and thinking about some of these neat innovations from an engineering perspective that you're talking about. Well, I think people will be excited about that, and we will naturally follow along. I just looked up while we were talking. We have listed 22 Meyers Manx, genuine Meyers Manx on BAT. And I've always just thought I don't know if you follow those or you watch what those are doing, but they naturally sell for a meaningful premium overall. There's many sort of copycats out there, and some of them are cool and were doing their own flavor, and some of them were really trying to be the Manx at the same time as that demand was sort of exploding back in the 60s and early 70s. And those ones, there's some famous sort of secondary names, but obviously Meyers Manx was sort of head and shoulders above the rest. And now you've seen, I'm sure, they go through big tent auctions, and they're like a really meaningful collectible. And I think there's a couple really special ones, like the #1 car and such, and some of the really special ones that happen to belong to Bruce or his family or other VIPs.
Right.
But I don't know. Do you see any of those around, or are those? Do you keep your finger on the pulse of any of those, given where the company is headed, or are you more future focused on the new stuff that's going to come out of the factory?
No, it's if you look at my design history and you look at as an example of how I approach the CTR and SCR for roof, it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's keeping that equity of what makes these cars magic. It's the secret sauce. And the Meyers Manx has this secret sauce in it, and we're not gonna throw that out. And we're going to be very careful. I think later this year, we'll be announcing our advisory board members, and you're going to be really shocked at who is joining our advisory board. And and these are people that will be used exactly for that, to give us their point of view and their advice. And these are compasses for us. So we have, I think, an amazing trajectory. I'm incredibly careful, in wanting design to be just perfect, and also that it means something to all of us, because I'm an enthusiast. I look at it from the lens that I'm the person that will buy it, and I don't want something that is superficial or done in a way that just it sort of says. It's kind of like, give an example. TR7, there was a designer that said, went to go look at the TR7, and he looks at one side of the car, he's looking at that line on the side, and he walks to the other side, and he goes, damn, it's on this side too. So design, great design is restraint. Great design is knowing what line to put where and how and what you do. Function is a great tool for in a compass for where you go.
Oh, you see me laughing. That's a good one. I like it. Oh man, TR7 and TR8. We've had those on BAT quite a bit, as you know, as well. I had an uncle that had one of those, and there were a lot of shaking heads in the family at the time. But I think I think some of them are kind of cool. They come on BAT every once in a while. I don't know if I'm going to dive into TR7 ownership anytime soon, but I think that I like the variety that's out there. But man, that quote is funny. I may steal that one. I think that's a really good one. And that's a good segue to jumping in and maybe talking about a little bit of, the design history and design career that you've had, some of the, illustrious characters or different mentors or people that you worked with at all these sorts of companies. I really think a lot of people on BAT love, obviously, early model vehicles and the design process for them, and what was going on at these different OEM companies in these amazing eras of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, as these cars that are so important to us and magical for us came to fruition. So can you point back to maybe any sort of milestone moments or interactions with special mentors of yours that were really meaningful for you, or thought that they were really impactful in the industry?
I was mentioning about Helmut Bott, and Helmut Bott was head of development at Porsche at that time, but he was hands-on. He'd be down in the studio a lot. We'd be presenting to him. Ferry Porsche would actually come into the studio on occasion, and we would present to Ferry Porsche. And that was really amazing, to be able to look at, the mindsets of people like Ferry Porsche. Because one time we were developing the 959, and there was a body shell in the middle of the studio, and on the body shell, we were developing the interior of the car, and it said on the front, it said Allrad, which means all-wheel drive 911 or something like to that effect. And Ferry Porsche walks up to it was on the hood, just a little thing, a sticker on it. And he says, at Porsche, we don't have to say what it is because the customer knows. And things like that were just really profound statements, and it really coming from, and I would always look at how people like Ferry Porsche and Helmut Bott and people like that were dressed also. They were really wearing a Lodenfrei, which is a German design style of wools, green wools, and very subdued and things like that. But you think about the magic that were done under these people. And then I remember Peter Falk. Peter Falk would pull up in front of the big engineering building at Weizsäck, and he always drove this kind of Talbot yellow 911. Every time the 911 came out, you'd get a new car every year, and he would order it exactly the same. He'd take off the big mirrors, and it would have the early mirror on it. It would have narrow tires and wheels on it. It was always spec'd out the same. Going to the racing department, things like that, and just seeing how serious Porsche was in its development of its race cars. Audi, I got to know, talk about being nervous in an environment that he would come in, and we would have, for instance, up at Volkswagen, there was the big showroom that design had at Wolfsburg, and he would walk around every single vehicle, talk in detail about every nuance. And right next to a clay model would be an engine, a W12 engine laid out with all of its parts, and he would be asking the engineer every nuanced question about weight and strength and everything. And you could see these engineers just sweating away. But those were great experiences in a way, because those things don't happen today. They just don't. We're in a different world today. But those were the days of when people were creating real time in a room together. It's different than the kind of the digital world that we live in today. And even at Daimler Chrysler, going on a lot of these trips with Dieter Zetsche, great. Just absolutely great people. Tom Gale, amazing person, amazing from the standpoint of his vision for design and the way that he was able to put design and the business side together and make design professional. So that, because design is always looked upon as a subjective, kind of thing that, we have to make it look pretty. But I think what Tom communicated was that it was an essential functional part of the vehicle that was also very important to marketing and selling the vehicle. And so the Americans were always a little bit further ahead than the Europeans in the marketing side of all of that. So, and Jay Mays is probably one of the most profound design leaders I've ever worked with. From the standpoint of not just understanding design, but understanding all the communication and nuances, and from the business side to the marketing, to the selling, to the engineering, to the storytelling. He is still today one of the most profound design leaders, and I've met them all. I have met them all, and nobody that I've met even comes close to Jay Mays.
That's amazing. And what company, Jay Meyers, for those who don't know that are listening, you work with him where?
I worked with Jay at Audi. And then I did also a stint with him at a company called SHR, which was a communication firm where we did a project for Alcoa. It was one of the early aluminum space frame vehicle concepts. And we did that with Lawrence Vandenacker. Lawrence, also a profound design leader, runs all of Renault design globally now. And then Jay ended up taking over Jack Telnack's role at Ford, but he became not just a VP, became a group VP and he also became the chief creative officer of Ford. So under his leadership, some of the most amazing vehicles came out, and concept vehicles, from the O21C through to all the F-Series trucks, the new Mustang, that the generation that's out right now, and just profound, on everything. But I have to say that design is limited by leadership. If you have really open-minded leadership, you can get amazing things. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of great designers leave the mainstream. Henrik Fisker, left Ford. He was running Ingenie, which is the design studio in London. And also he ran Aston Martin, and went on his own. And we know where he is now. And, and there are others, Franz von Holzhausen. Franz was a young designer with us in the Volkswagen Audi studio, and now he runs design at Tesla. And there's Derek Jenkins. Derek, young designer that worked with us at Volkswagen Audi. He went with us over to Europe at Audi. Now he runs all of design at Lucid. And one of the guys that we worked with at SHR in developing the Alcoa vehicle was Peter Rawlinson. Peter was at that point chief engineer at Lotus, and so we had hired Lotus to help us engineer it. And now Peter is the CEO of Lucid, and Peter holds many of the patents because he was chief engineer for Tesla. So really a small world.
Yeah, unbelievable sort of interconnectedness, and obviously all those new brands, electric cars, different stuff, and people are moving into these innovative areas. It's really fun to watch those people flourish. If you had to look back, here's a very general question. If you had to look back on your career, your hands in all these different models and components that you designed and different aspects, you talk about interiors, exteriors. What's sort of one of the really crowning achievements for you personally in terms of really being glad that you were involved on some vehicle or with some team or with some moment in time that happened for you?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that, you have to kind of look at it in context of where you are in your life and growing, and what it means to you, because, all my experiences at Porsche, no matter how small or large, were big experiences, and highlights. And I could outline, probably for a couple hours, those things. Same with Audi, and Volkswagen. And even Daimler Chrysler, Tomahawk motorcycle, Chrysler 300, Ford, many great experiences, concepts. We did a concept vehicle called Start that was a concept that we showed at Beijing as one of my favorites. But the one that probably meant the most, because it was something that was created out of my sketch pad from its purest form, and it was a story that was inside of me since early Porsche days, when I did with my colleague a concept outside of the studio called the kitchen model. And if you want to read about the kitchen model, the latest issue of 000 magazine mentions the kitchen model in it. And the kitchen model was a very pure Spider vehicle that we did in the mid 80s. And we did it as a scale model. I did it with my colleague, Steve Merkett, and two Swedish modelers, Beckborn and his colleague. And so we you know, what we got out of that, you know, at Audi, you know, I was always doing a lot of thumbnail sketches and ideas. And when I first went over with Jay to Audi, I did this little thumbnail, and Jay loved it so much that he took it to Dr. Pefkin, who was at that time head of development for Audi. And this literally happened within a couple hours. And he came back and he said, you know, Dr. Pefkin loves this idea. He wants you to do it. And so I was asked to do it in private, away from work. And they set up my apartment with my drawing table and some things. And then eventually an area in a loft in the little village of Geimersheim. And that's the birth of the Audi TT. And the Audi TT was a very pure process from start to finish, you know, and it was my philosophy of Erwin Commenda and Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche coming together with this unique Bauhaus inspired philosophy, and literally not one line was changed from the concept through to the production vehicle. And so that's a real highlight, and it's also a great example of how to do things when you have the right team, the right people, the right leadership. And eventually Dr. Pefkin became chairman of Audi, and he helped me with the right team. And even after that project, he would come out to California. And by the way, you know, the first time I met Dr. Pefkin was before he was head of development, and I joined Audi. He was a chief engineer, and we had I came to California. We had lunch together, and he told me about, you know, as when he was younger, he drove across America in a Volkswagen bus, and so that's the soulfulness that is really required, I think, in leadership, to have those experiences of relating to the customer and why you fight for certain things.
I love it. Oh my goodness. The TT, I am a huge fan of the TT. I don't know if you were involved on the interior and the exterior, and certainly the exterior, which was so revolutionary. I remember when the sort of sketches came out in Road and Track and stuff for that car, and everybody was just totally blown away. And it was such a neat moment, and cool to see Audi's resurgence. When I was in college, I interned at Audi AG in Ingolstadt, and I got to work on the EF team, the Fahrwerk team that did chassis development, and we worked on the TT and what the shifter was going to feel like. And I equate that to your moments, you know, going into Porsche, and like every little project was like mind-blowing and amazing for me, because I was 21 years old and I'm walking around the halls of, you know, the inner skunk works of Audi, and they had these models of the TT that hadn't been released yet, and I'm writing letters to my friends telling them about the TT is going to be amazing and all. I mean, it was just such a time, and I got a tiny little flavor of that, and you are 100 times the innovator that I was, because I was just like hanging on as an intern, and you were actually doing the groundbreaking stuff. But I got a little taste of that sort of pre-development energy, and seeing stuff behind the curtain, and knowing what a meaningful vehicle that was. The air vents on the dash of the TT, the way you click them to turn them on and off, I'm sure you're familiar with. Like, that's like one of my favorite things about that whole car and that whole sort of era. Like, anytime I get into TT, I immediately adjust all the vents just because they feel so cool. And there were so many neat little design elements. So it's such a design-driven model. So sorry for letting me gush here a little bit about.
Absolutely. No, it was an amazing process, and you know, the development. I led the development, and I penned the exterior, and then working with a brilliant interior designer, Romy Rost, developing the interior philosophy. And the interior was inspired by the Speedster. You know, you can see that simple, you know, a dash hood, and then the vents. We actually built the first concept vehicles. We started off at Udelhof in Geimersheim, which does a lot of stuff with Audi, and then we moved down to Ital Design in Torino. And I remember meeting Giugiaro for the first time and bringing him into the room where we had the full-size model, and I asked him his opinion, and he said, "I wouldn't change a line." You know, that was really amazing. And then we brought Audi engineering down to Torino on every detail of that car, including those vents, and those vents are like a Leica camera. You know, the way that the thought process behind it, the way that the vents work, every nuance of it, and everybody on the team had that mindset, you know, to do things that way. And I remember showing it at the Spider version at the Detroit show. And I remember Harm Lagai coming up to the show stand, looking at the car, and he sat in the car with me, and he goes, and I worked for Harm at Porsche as well as Tony, and he said, "You know, this is really nice stuff, but this stuff will never make it to production." so anyways, you know, history has proven differently, but that's I think that early mindset is what, you know, when you think of somebody like a Steve Jobs or somebody like that had this absolute, you have to have, not only do you have to have the vision, but you have to have the resources and the power to do this, you know. And in those days at Audi, we had the right people put together that you know, Jay Mays, we had Dr. Pefkin, I had this brilliant engineer, Ralph Vilner, Romy Rost. You know, these were just brilliant people that were so passionate about doing it, you know, and there was only way to do it, and that was doing it right, you know. And so that's why that car is the way it is.
Yeah, just really amazing. I mean, and it also helps that Audi started selling some A4s and some A6s. They had some money, right? So they had some firepower.
Yeah.
As opposed to 5 or 10 years earlier, they were not in the advantageous position. So when I was there, it really seemed like it was like, you know, all guns blazing on innovation and building buildings and factories and doing stuff. And that was right in there at the right time. So neat. So
well, you have to have a halo vehicle, you know,
yeah.
to attract people to your philosophy.
Yeah.
And in a way, this is what I'm doing now at Meyers Manx. You know, the vehicle, whether it be the legacy vehicle or the next, what we're calling Manx 2.0 internally, is going to be that. It will be that. I promise you that. It will be, because everybody that our whole team are creating something great and something that's in Bruce's legacy, you know, that is going to make him proud.
I love it. Well, hey, I think that's a great item to end on. And wow, what an interesting conversation. And I think we could stem towards or springboard to more conversations about so many of your past stories, which I appreciate you sharing, but also all the new ideas and innovation around Manx, which we also appreciate you sharing. So Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for spending time with us. Thanks for being part of BAT. Like, everybody always likes to know, you know, who are these people behind the curtain, and you're certainly one of them. You mentioned you've been in there commenting and lurking around the halls of BAT for quite a while. Can you share just briefly before we leave when or how you discovered BAT? Do you recall the story?
You know, because I started watching BAT in the very early days. I mean, I remember. Because my colleague John Kleiner and I, you know, we started the Irvine Cars and Coffee, and even at that time, you know, Bring a Trailer was kind of in the dialogue that you know, and Richard Plavitich, I remember, was really watching it and participating on it. I remember him and my friend Jim Kokoris put a Messerschmitt, the three-wheeler on it, and I think he had sold it maybe a couple of other vehicles. Yeah, I don't know whether that was the first vehicle he did or was his Triumph, but anyways, it just became this place to go, and I just love the grassrootsness of it. I love that you had all these great people commenting, about the car. There was no politics. It wasn't high school. It was really about, and when a bad car came up, people called it out, and my interests are broad in classic cars. It goes from, the Porsche Volkswagen side, and I have a 72 246 Dino coupe, and which is not by any means, it's a driver, and so it sort of fits the as found barn find look that I like sometimes on Bring a Trailer, and but even Ewan McGregor right now, the Buick that he was selling, I mean, that is just tremendous stuff. The bandwidth of stuff that comes up, and I see other sites trying to get that kind of traction, but they just don't have that secret sauce. They just and they're trying to emulate Bring a Trailer, but I think it's because the comment section and the photography, and also the way that the description is choreographed, is done so well that there's a certain bar that a vehicle has to kind of pass through to get on to Bring a Trailer.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we work very hard at that. We have a huge team now that's working to maintain that sort of specialness for it. And we feel very fortunate that people, esteemed folks in the car universe, such as yourself, are willing to spend time and join us and participate from time to time on the website. And yeah, everybody really wins when people share their knowledge and their stories, and some of those names that you mentioned of people that steered you towards it. We are very thankful that they're involved as well. So thanks for sharing that and kind of bringing it back around to the connection to BAT. Thanks for all the stories today. And we look forward to your great success with Meyers Manx and your other projects. And we hope maybe we can have you again sometime.
Thank you, Randy. And I love being on your show.
Fantastic. Well, we'll do it again. Thanks everybody for joining the BAT podcast this time. And we'll be back with more fun guests in the week to come.